For ages, man in the West has believed that Rome and Greece had provided him with civilization. On the other hand, Greek philosophers have declared on multiple occasions that they drew on even earlier sources. Travelers returning to Europe from Egypt described seeing imposing pyramids, temple cities half buried in sand dunes guarded by bizarre stone monsters. Thus it was that when Napoleon landed in Egypt in 1799, he brought a team of experts with him to study and interpret the monuments. One of his officers discovered a stone slab near Rosetta with an inscription dating from 196 BCE, written in hieroglyphic, Old Egyptian pictographic writing, and 2 additional scripts. The discovery of ancient Egyptian script and language, as well as later archaeological investigation, demonstrated to Western man that Egypt had a sophisticated civilization long before Greek culture arrived. Egyptian archives date royal dynasties back to 3100 BCE, more than 2 millennia before the Hellenic civilization. Greece was a latecomer rather than a pioneer, maturing in the 5th and 4th centuries BC. So was Egypt the cradle of our civilization? Regardless of how logical that conclusion sounded, the facts worked against it, despite the fact that Greek scholars documented visits to Egypt. The ancient knowledge sources they mentioned were unearthed elsewhere. The pre-Hellenic cultures of the Aegean Sea, the Minoan on Crete's island and the Mycenaean on the Greek mainland, showed traces of Near Eastern culture adoption rather than Egyptian culture adoption. Key routes for the Greeks to get access to the earlier civilization were Syria and Anatolia, not Egypt. Scholars have been ecstatic to discover a rising number of parallels between Semitic and Hellenic civilizations, noting that the Dorian conquest of Greece and the Israelite invasion of Canaan following the exodus from Egypt both took place about the same period, around the 13th century BCE. By establishing that Linear A, an early Minoan script, reflected a Semitic language, Professor Cyrus H. Gordon pioneered a new field of research. He believed that the pattern, as opposed to the content, of Hebrew and Minoan civilizations is startlingly comparable, and that the island's name, Crete, was the same as the Hebrew word Keret, the walled city, and had a Semitic counterpart in the story about a king of Keret. The Near East gave birth to the Hellenistic Alphabet, which gave rise to Latin and English alphabets. According to ancient Greek historians, the alphabet was given to them by a Phoenician named Cadmus, which means old, who had the same number of letters in the same order as in the Hebrew alphabet. It was the only Greek alphabet during the time of the Trojan War. The poet Simonides of Xeos raised the number of letters to the 26th that we know, sometime in the 5th century BCE. When comparing the sequence, names, signs, and even numerical values of the original Near Eastern alphabet with those of the far later ancient Greek and more modern Latin, it is apparent that Greek and Latin writing, as well as the entire foundation of our Western culture, came from the Near East. Greek ties to the Near East in the first millennia BCE are well known to scholars, culminating in Alexander the Macedonian's conquest of the Persians in 331 BCE. Many details concerning these Persians and their homelands, roughly paralleling today's Iran, were recorded in Greek records. Scholars concluded they were part of the Aryan or lordly people who appeared from somewhere near the Caspian Sea toward the end of the 2nd millennium BCE, based mostly on the names of their kings, Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, and the names of their deities, which appear to belong in the Indo-European linguistic stem. It's also reached westward to Asia Minor, eastward to India, and southerly to the countries of the Medes and Parsis mentioned in the Old Testament. If you're interested in information on the ancient Aryan race, please check out our series on Arctic Home in the Vedas, which we have linked in the description. It wasn't all that simple. Despite their alleged foreign origins, the invaders were treated as if they were actual figures in the Old Testament. Cyrus, for example, was referred to as anointed of Yahweh, indicating a remarkable link between non-Hebrew and the Hebrew God. According to the ancient book of Ezra, Cyrus confessed his intention to restore the temple in Jerusalem and stated that he was acting on directions from Yahweh, whom he referred to as God of Heaven, after the name given to the dynasty by its founder, Hachemanish. Cyrus and the successive monarchs of his dynasty were known as Achaemenids. This is not an Aryan title, but a magnificent Semitic appellation meaning wise man. Scholars have mainly dismissed various signs pointing to parallels between the Hebrew god Yahweh and the god Achaemenians dubbed the Wise Lord, who was shown on Darius' royal seal as soaring in the skies within a winged globe. The old Persians' cultural, spiritual, and historical roots have already been established, stretching back to the ancient empires of Babylon and Assyria, whose size and fall were recorded in the Old Testament. The symbols that made up the script found on Achaemenid monuments and seals were originally regarded to be lovely ornaments. Engelbert Kampfer, who visited Persepolis, the old Persian capital, in 1686, identified the marks as cunates, or wedge-shaped impressions. That script has now been referred to as cuneiform.